This is the Fire Maple X2, one of Fire Maple's all-time best-selling compact all-in-one cook systems, and for good reason. High value, very functional unit. I have a full review of this unit, and if you're interested, I'll put a link to that review at the end of this video. But recently, Fire Maple decided to make some improvements to the X2, and they came out with the X2 Pro. Now, there were a few improvements for sure, but there are also some serious deficiencies in my opinion. In fact, I made a video comparing the X2 with the X2 Pro so that I could show the improvements and the cons that went along with the new system. Well, Fire Maple listened, and they decided to revise the X2 Pro, and they come out with the X2 Pro Generation 2. If you're interested in seeing what they did to make this even better, keep watching. Before I begin, I want to thank Fire Maple for sending out the X2 Pro Generation 2 so that I can share it with you and allow me to make a comparison between the original X2 Pro and the new version. And I thought what I would do is just start by showing you what is inside of the X2 Pro Generation 2 so that you get an idea of what it is you get when you purchase it. Now, I'll tell you that it is actually the same for all three, the X2, the X2 Pro, and the X2 Pro Generation 2. The contents are identical in every way, and it is basically some improvements to the pot itself that make the Generation 2 something worth looking at. So let me just take the X2 Pro out of the way, and we'll start at the top. Now, here is one small con right off of the top, unfortunately, and I think it's just a production issue that they should be able to address quite easily. On the original X2, and the X2 Pro for that matter, there is this little piece of wire that has little brass balls on the end of it, and they're an extra level of security as they engage with the handle just to prevent the handle from opening up unintentionally and maybe dropping all the contents out. It's probably not necessary. If you didn't have it, it wouldn't really affect the performance of the pot in any way. So it's the way it works is just there's a bit of spring tension that holds the handle closed, and then you can lift it up. Now, on the X2 Pro Generation 2, they just made that wire maybe 3 or 4 millimeters too long, so it doesn't actually engage the handle the way it should. It just kind of sits there loosely. Now, I have mentioned this to Fire Maple, and they did say they would address it in production. Whether or not it's too late to do it for the first run, if it'll have to wait for the second run that they do, well, we'll see. But right now, as it stands right now, this piece of wire is just non-functional. You could probably do some modifications to it. If you get one of the units that has that little wire, you could probably do something to shorten it down and put some tension on it. But, you know, if you don't and you cut it off, you wouldn't be any worse for wear on this unit. All right, let's start by opening up and showing you what's in the inside. You're going to appreciate this. Anybody who owns the current X2, it locks in place just nicely. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. There's the lid. Inside is the gas canister stand, which allows you to put the gas canister on this, and that provides you a wider base so that you have more stability in using the pot. Next inside is this unit, and this will attach to the stove portion of the unit when I bring it out, and by turning the pot supports in, and this allows you to use pots or pans other than this one on top of the gas stove itself. We'll put that aside, and then inside, of course, is the gas stove itself, and this attaches to your gas canister on the bottom. There's the adjusting lever there. I'll tell you, it is exactly the same burner on all three stoves. So there is no difference in the performance of the stoves. It's in the additional details that they've done. So let me just put that out of the way, these items out of the way. Now, what did they change between the Pro and the Generation 2 of the Pro? Well, the biggest thing, actually, the most significant thing, is the handle itself. So let me just start by showing you the X2 or the X2 Pro, sorry. Now this one, the wire thing does engage the way it's supposed to, so that's great. Again, I think that's just a small production issue. The biggest complaint I had about this unit is the handle. Watch. Can you see that? And I go into a bit more detail in the review video where I compared this unit against the original X2. And yeah, I was just severely disappointed on this in a number of ways. Not only does it not lock in place very securely, it's loose and floppy, and I actually found that there was some risk of spillage when you're pouring from the unit by holding on the handle. Now, part of the reason they went with this, obviously to simplify production, but also to reduce weight, because it is a much more skeletonized piece of metal than is on either the X2 or the X2 Pro version 2, as you'll see in a minute. So let me just leave that out for a second while I bring in the X2 Pro Generation 2. Boy, this can get confusing, right? Now, just look at the handle. Look how smoothly it works and locks into place. Now that's locked into place, no rattle, no movement whatsoever. It is not going to collapse on you during use. You do have to press a little bit of a detent button here in order to release it and bring it back over the top. Now that's only one of the improvements they made to it. They actually added more metal to the handle, rolled the edges over so it's less skeletonized. Let's see if I can give you a few comparisons here. So you can see there's more metal. It's much more comfortable to hold in your hand. There's no sharp edges. It's just more, more improved. And in fact, it's much closer to the original. So if I bring the original back in and you fold the handle over, it's basically the same mechanism. Locks into place identically. In fact, if you look at the two mechanisms, you'll say they look identical, and they are. For all intents and purposes, the mechanism themselves identical. The only difference between the original X2 and the X2 Pro Generation 2 is that the original had plastic molded to the outside of the handle for a little bit more comfort in holding on to it. So I don't begrudge them getting rid of the plastic, because I'm sure that was an added expense, and it didn't really do anything for the handle that the new version doesn't have working for it as well. Now, that's the biggest difference between the two. In fact, that's the only real difference, but that is significant enough. Enough for me to say that I can now recommend the X2 Pro Generation 2 as a much better unit and a worthy successor to the original Gen 2. Now, there's one last thing that I want to talk about, and first off, let me just fold the handles of these three units over. And that is weight, because I think this is worth adding into the discussion. So the original X2, if you include the stuff sack, which only weighs about 1 gram, all the units inside has a total weight of 1 pound, 5.8 ounces, or 617 grams. Yes, I am looking at a little bit of a cheat list here, just so I have the weights for you to reference for you. So this is, right now, it stood as the midweight, or 1 pound, 5.8 ounces. Now, part of the reason why Fire Maple went to the X2 Pro was to reduce the weight, and they did. They reduced the weight significantly through a number of things. One was the handle and the locking mechanism. Another part was the cutouts at the bottom. You can see they're a little larger than they are on the original X2. And they got the weight down to 1 pound, 4.8 ounces, or 589 grams. So there is a bit of a weight savings there, but the weight savings wasn't supposed to be the biggest improvements. The lid and a few other things were supposed to be the bigger improvements. So they did a good job of reducing the weight, but of course that came at the expense of a really good functional handle. Now comes in the X2 Pro Generation 2. They increased the weight. They had no choice. By improving the handle, the weight went up significantly. So now this unit comes in, all told, everything inside of it, 1 pound, 6.3 ounces, which is 633 grams. In fact, this is now heavier than the original. So in terms of weight, you have this one being the midweight, this one being the lightest, this one being the heaviest. But to be honest, if I hold these two units up, we're talking about a difference of, well, actually it's a bit of a difference, 45 grams, maybe a little bit more difference between the two of these, but it's not so significant that it would make me decide I had to have the original over the improved. The improved has a lot of other benefits going for it, so I don't mind that they added a little extra weight to get a good, safe, functional handle for this unit. All right, that's everything I wanted to share with you about the Fire Maple X2 Pro Generation 2. If you have any comments or questions, put them in the comments section below. I'll put all the links to this information. And by the way, if you're not aware, I have a link that Fire Maple provided me, which will be in the video description, which if you use and purchase anything from Fire Maple's website, you'll get a 10% discount. Not a lot, I understand, but it might be enough to make a difference in your decision. All right. Until next time, get out and explore and take that path less traveled because it will make all the difference. Bye for now.